lovers, Victoria here and you're watching My Books to Me, and today I'm bringing you an unhaul. It's been, I think, 2 years since I've done an unhaul video. I've definitely unhauled books here and there over the past 2 years, but this past week I rearranged my room, which involved me moving my bookshelves and reorganizing them completely, and it gave me the opportunity to sort of think about the books I was putting back on my shelf and whether I still wanted to keep them. Most of the books that I have in this basket are ones, most of them I actually haven't read, but I'm at the point where I just don't really feel the inclination to read them, and they just don't excite me. Like, I don't look at them and think, okay, no, I'll keep it because I might read it. Maybe in the future I will want to read these books, but I can just borrow them from the library or find them secondhand or something like that, or get the ebook. But for now, these are books that, as I said, on the most part I haven't read, but I don't really feel like reading them. The blurb doesn't excite me anymore. And there are a couple that I have read that I just won't reread. So let's just dive right in. First one is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffinger. I definitely wanted to read this at the time when I bought it, and in a way I probably still kind of do want to read it, but I don't feel like I'm going to read it anytime soon, and at this point in time I just kind of just want to watch the movie, which I have seen bits of, but it doesn't feel like something I want to read. It doesn't really excite me. It's just not a story I really want to read. This next one might be a little bit controversial, and that is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. I have not read this. I got this, I think, before the movie came out, with all of the excitement surrounding it. And I was really excited at the time to read it. However, it's been so long since I bought it, I don't want to read it. I know how it ends. You know, I pretty much know the gist of this story, that I don't really want to read it. And I know it's meant to be like a really emotional ending. And as much as I love reading emotional books, I just don't really feel like reading this. And especially because, like, there was so much hype surrounding the movie and therefore then the book. Like, I'm just kind of over it. I don't really want to read it. And I apologize if this is a book that you really, really love, but as I said, I kind of know the gist of this story and how it ends, and I just don't really feel like reading it. The next one is A Maid of Secrets by Jennifer McGowan. This is a book, I think it's a book that I bought the first year I was doing BookTube, and it sounded really interesting. I think it's about this girl who is part of the Maids of Honor of Queen Elizabeth I, I think it is. And it's kind of meant to be like a mystery crime thing. I'm not quite sure. It's a book that I've considered unhauling a few times up until this point, and I've just kind of reached the point where I'm like, I don't really feel like reading it. Like, I've owned it for like nearly two and a half years kind of thing, and I never want to pick it up, and so I'm just going to give it away. Next books are ones that I can't believe I'm unhauling, but at the same time, again, I just don't feel like reading them, and that is books 1, 2 and 3 of the Books of the Cataclysm series by Sean Williams. And the funny thing is about this is I got the second book, which is I got the second book, The Blood Debt, real cheap at some stall in a mall at one point, and then I started looking for the rest of the series, and I ended up finding books 1 and 4 in my local secondhand bookshop, and I bought them. The thing is, I just don't feel like reading this story, and the size kind of does intimidate me. I'm not really here for it. These are 3 books that maybe won't get unhauled from this unhaul, but I mean, I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't feel like it. Next 2 books are The Beginning and Foreign Exchange in the Glee series by Sophie Lyle. I've read the first one, I haven't read the second one. As much as I love Glee, I don't really want these books anymore. I read the first one, it's alright, it's a pretty good origin. I think, like, I'm glad I read this because it was a really good backstory to all of these characters. It didn't 100% line up with what we see in the TV series, but, you know, it was still really good. And the second one, like, and I think there's a third and maybe a fourth one, they're like additions to the series that lay outside of the TV series, and I just don't really want to read them. I may end up keeping this one just for sentimental reasons, but at the end of the day I'm getting rid of these. The next 5 books are ones that I've been wanting to get rid of for a long time, but I kind of kept thinking about it and thinking, no, I'll keep it, maybe I'll read it. And they're Jodi Picoult books. I've only ever read one Jodi Picoult book, and that is The Pact. I'm keeping that one because I want to reread it, and I actually really enjoyed it. I've tried reading one of these books and I never really got into it, and I'm not really fazed by Jodi Picoult and her books. Like, you know, I know a lot of people love her and recommend reading her, but I'm not. there for it. So the books I'm getting rid of are Vanishing Act, Perfect Match, Salem Falls, Picture Perfect, which is the one I started reading, and actually looking at it, I might keep it because it's also a short book and I was kind of intrigued by the plot. We'll see. And the other one is 19 Minutes. Back when I read The Pact, because I actually got that in a set of 3 books, I think it was, I was like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed The Pact, I'll read more books, but they just sort of all had different vibes to them and I'm just not really phased by it. But as I said, I might keep Picture Perfect because it's also short. Next one is A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. And you know how I've said that I really want to read the book before watching the TV series? I still kind of want to do that, but at the same time, I just don't think I'm going to do it. And the size intimidates me, and like really high fantasies like this, I struggle with a little bit. So I'm thinking I'm just going to watch the series, and if I want to read the books, I'm just going to get an ebook for it as well. I also feel like getting an ebook will be a little bit easier to read. Next one is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I'm actually planning on repurchasing this book in the Penguin English Library edition because that's where I'm collecting all my classics in. I've read this twice. I really enjoy it, although I do want to reread it again without the worry of having to remember things for school, because that's when I've only read it. But I am planning on rebuying this. I'm just unhauling this edition. Then we have the Mapmaker Chronicles by A.L. Tate. I've had this book for ages. It was targeted at fans of Percy Jackson, and as much as I love Percy Jackson, I do not really feel like reading these books anymore. So we have Prisoner of the Black Hawk, Breath of the Dragon, and Race to the End of the World. I think the 4th one came out this year. And I mean, they sound fun, they're just not intriguing enough for me to pick up. Like, as much as I love Percy Jackson, I would prefer to spend my time reading the rest of Rick Riordan's work than reading these. I'm sure they're really good, I've heard lots of great things about them, but I definitely feel like someone will enjoy them much more than me just using them to collect dust on my bookshelves. Another Jodi Picoult book is Between the Lines, which is also written with Samantha Van Leer. Again, I'm just not really phased. As much as the premise for this one intrigued me, about writing a character and falling in love with them, like, again, not really phased to read it. I've owned it for a while now and I'm not picking it up. Like, I don't feel like picking it up, and I mean, as interesting as the premise is, as I said, it's just not phasing me enough to actually want to read it. The next one is Dissolution by C.J. Sansom. This is a historical fiction set during the reign of Henry VIII, but it's a Matthew Shardock, who was a lawyer, and I don't know, I think it's a crime mystery thingy. It's the first in a series. Not really my thing, to be honest. I don't know really why I bought it. I think I bought it because it was cheap. But, you know, not really my thing, and I definitely know there will be people out there who will actually enjoy reading this book. Next one is Kiss Me Deadly, Tales of Paranormal Romance, edited by Trisha Talbot. It's got a whole bunch of authors in here that I enjoy or that I want to read, but I'm just not really, I don't really want to. As much as I love paranormal romance and paranormal fantasy, I just don't really want to read these. Like, my idea of getting this was that I could read these authors and then get their books if I enjoyed them, but no, I don't really feel like reading it, and I've owned it long enough that I'm just gonna throw it, well, not throw it away, but pass it on. Next one is Trouble is a Friend of Mine by Stephanie Tromley. I actually got this in an Outcrate, and I didn't ever think I would unhaul an Outcrate book, but at the same time, this isn't really a story that interests me. It was from a box, I think it was about mysteries. It's kind of meant to be like the wit of Sherlock, the smarts of Veronica Mars, the humour of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This debut novel you won't want to miss. It's kind of like Nancy Drew-ish kind of thing. Doesn't really phase me, and although I haven't read most of the books I've got from Outcrate, they're definitely all books I really want to read, and I think this is the one that I don't want to read, so I'm going to pass it on to someone else who does want to read it. Next one is The Wolf Road by Beth Lewis. This is a book that did intrigue me at the time, but I'm not feeling it anymore. I mean, the synopsis does sound interesting, but I'm just not intrigued enough to want to pick it up. The next one is Alison Hewitt is Trapped by Madeline Rowe. I really like Madeline Rowe. I've been reading her Asylum series, and there are a couple of more books of hers that I'm really excited to read. This one is a zombie book, and I'm not really into zombies so much, so I'm going to pass this on to someone else. Next one is Lily and the Octopus by Stephen Riley. I actually won this in a Simon & Schuster giveaway, and it sounds really weird. It did sound intriguing at the time, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I'm not going to read this at all, ever. And the next one is Gold Famous Citrus by Claire V. Watkins. I've heard a lot of great things about this book and it does sound intriguing, but this is one of the first books I got, like probably like 2.5 years ago. I don't really want to read it. I'm going to see if my mum wants to read it because I definitely feel like it might be something she'll enjoy. Otherwise I'm passing it on to someone else. I do love the cover for this though. I'm annoyed that the cover is so beautiful and I want to get rid of it. Finally, the last book is the Puncher and Whitman's anthology of Australian poetry edited by John Leonard. I had to buy this for university. I had to buy this for one of my university classes. I think it was Australian literature. I can't quite remember what it was. As much as I enjoyed this and some of the poetry I've read within it, I'm really not tempted to pick it up again. I've kept pretty much most of my university books, but I'm not that big on poetry, and I much prefer reading just a single author's book of poetry rather than an anthology. And as I said, I'm not going to pick this up. As much as, like, it's a great addition to my collection, but I'm not going to pick it up, and it's just really taking up space and collecting dust. So they are all the books that I'm going to unhaul. There's a few in there that I might not unhaul because I'm on the fence about them, but for the most part, they are all the books I'm going to unhaul. I apologize if there are any books in here that you really like and you think I should read, but as I said, like, if I can pick up a book and go, I don't really want to read this, and I don't feel bad for wanting to unhaul it, I'm going to unhaul it. I own so many books, and although this is only really a small chunk out of my bookshelf and my TBR, it is a little bit stress releasing to see that I don't have to read these books, that these books are no longer on my TBR, and that I can look at my bookshelf and see books that I actually do want to read. So again, apologize if they're books that you like, but they're just not books I feel like reading, or for the couple that I have read, I don't really see myself reading them again. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I feel like now is the perfect time to unhaul some books. We're nearing the end of the year, and I think it's great to start the year off afresh. I definitely feel like I'm doing that, looking at my bookshelf, and I just see all of these books that I've read and really enjoyed, or that I'm really excited to read, hopefully at some point. If you haven't unhauled in a while, or you haven't unhauled ever, seriously do it. Even if you only get rid of a handful of books, I think it makes the biggest difference to your TBR and what you look at on your shelves. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next week with another one. Bye!